Thank you. Good morning. As Jennifer said, you are hearty souls. Thank you for finding us this morning and making your way across the lawn, around the ice, and in the cold. Forgive me for keeping my jacket on. I am Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and thank you for being here with us this morning. We needed to gather together. The short version is that we were flooded, and we will be fine. That's right. And I have a longer version. I'm just going to share everything with you because although I've been on the phone with the insurance company, this is much more your building than mine. And you will be caring for it in the coming weeks and months, and I know you care for it deeply. We took on about up to 6 inches of water from underneath the building, and at least 2 inches throughout the first floor. Losses include our administrator's computer, all of our phones, and some of our other equipment, lots of files and supplies. An electrician has been in for an initial assessment to ensure that we are safe, but about half of our breakers are still tripped, and we need the electrician to come back out again before restoring full power. We've gotten new phones for our main office. I don't have a new phone for my office yet, so if you need me, just call the main line or my cell phone. The internet is up and running. Thank you, Comcast. We likely lost both of our AC units. We don't know yet about the elevator, and that is a big unknown. That got a lot of water, but it's a priority of ours to get that back up and running. There's a major hole in the east side yard and under the church, but it's not a structural problem. We lost our back step, so we won't be using that door for a little while. We have hired Wayland Restoration, and they are amazing. And they are the ones who have provided all of the machines that are drying us out downstairs, and they're fabulous. A bunch of local guys, and we're so lucky that we made it onto their list. We do have flood insurance. This is a good thing. We're actually covered for structural damage to the building, but not for any of our contents. So we learned that. The Unitarian Universalist Association is already on the job helping us out. They are going to set up what they call a Faithify campaign. It's a little like GoFundMe, where people from all over can contribute online toward our rebuilding efforts. That will be up and running within days, and I will send out the link and you can spread the word. And we have already been receiving lots of support from all over, different churches checking in with us. So stay tuned about that Faithify campaign. And we will let all of you know once we know what the gaps are. And I know this is such a generous congregation, and we'll be fine. I will thank them again later, but I really need to thank, right off the bat, Keith and David. I wouldn't have gotten through this without them. They've been here each day, and I absolutely need to thank April, our administrator. She's been a gem. I'm not going to take questions now, but I'm going to just stay up here after the service until all your questions are answered, or to the best of my abilities answered. So anyone who has lingering questions, stay a little bit after the service, and we can talk more then. But right now we're going to begin, as we begin all of our worship services, by lighting our chalice, symbol of our faith. And this morning, Lawrence is going to light our chalice for us. Our reading this morning is by Robert Walsh, entitled "It Matters." I knew a man who had printed on his stationery this proverb, "Nothing is settled everything matters. It established a certain ambiance for reading his letters, as if to say, what you are about to read is to be taken seriously, but is not final. I remember him and his proverbs sometimes, Robbie writes, especially when it seems impossible to change the world or myself in any significant way. Times like the beginnings of New Year's. Sorry, Jim, I say, it's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made, losses have been suffered. There has been growth and decay. There have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether during this year one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident, but now it is settled. One day this year, I was present just when someone needed me. Another day, I was busy doing something else when I was needed. One day, I said something to a friend that injured our relationship. Another day, I said something that enabled a person to see life in a new way. The best and the worst of those days is now written. All my tears of joy or sorrow cannot erase it. If I stay with my meditation long enough, the reply comes. Robbie, says Jim, you have misunderstood the proverb. It is true that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions or the chances of the world, but what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be. The meaning of a life is not contained within one act or one day or 1 year. As long as you are alive, the story of your life is still being told, and the meaning is still open. As long as there is life in the world, the story of the world is still being told. What is done, but nothing is settled. And if nothing is settled, then everything matters. Every choice, every act in the new year matters. Every word, every deed is making the meaning of your life and telling the story of the world. Everything matters in the coming year, and more importantly, everything matters today. Now is the time in our service where we offer our deep gratitude for this place, and I think please join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation. After our spoken prayer and we'll have a time of silence, and then we'll sing together hymn number 123, Spirit of Life, which you can also find in your order of service. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. Our New Year's prayer this morning is by Kate Lohr. Great Spirit of Life, as a new year begins, we turn inward to reflect about the state of our lives. What lessons have we learned in the past year, and which new ones now call us forward? To whom do we still owe an apology or expression of thanks? And with whom must we draw fresh boundaries? As we pause from our regular rhythms of rush, 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 we open ourselves to new perspectives and possibilities. We give thanks for these moments and for the wisdom they afford us. May they bring us together in the sacred dynamics of life so that we, as individuals and as members of this community, might reach our full potential. As we step across this threshold, let this new year be a year of greater awe and gratitude, of deeper kindness and acceptance, and more courageous acts of conviction. For a kinder, more equitable, and sustainable world is not only possible, she is on her way. And in the quietness of this sacred community, we can ever hear her breathing. And to this prayer we add our prayers for all who were affected by the storms and flooding here in Provincetown and in all coastal areas. And we add our gratitude and thanks for a community who cares so deeply about this building and its people. Amen. Thank you. So earlier this week, I had written a sermon about New Year's resolutions. It was a good sermon, a little scientific maybe. It was all about how our brains work and how that ties into New Year's resolutions and why they are so hard to keep. There was a nod to Buddhism and the practice of mindfulness, some recommendations by psychologists and a life coach about making small steps toward big changes, a good strong ending. Then Thursday happened. I was on a conference call from home with the worship committee that afternoon. It was a Zoom call where you can see everyone on the computer. And so even Jane Bunker down in Florida was participating. As we discussed worship plans for the coming year, my phone started to blow up. After the third call in a row from Provincetown, I realized something was wrong. I think I better pick this up, I told them. And that's when I learned that Dan Lacombe, in town for just a quick visit, had stopped by the church during the storm and found that the water had breached our floors from underneath the building. We had taken on quite a bit of water. Linda and Dan stopping by the meeting house mid-blizzard was more than a little bit providential, I'd say. And our community jumped into action right away. Some making phone calls, some notifying the authorities, some making their way to the meeting house, some serving in the valued role of keeping us all calm, some volunteering for last-minute babysitting so that the minister and her wife could make their way to the meeting house too. Members and friends alike arrived at the church, some with buckets in hand, ready to do what they could to help this old building. The water had subsided with the tide by the time I got here, but it was still so high under the building that you could literally see fish swimming through our trap door. Our awesome electrician came out and helped us to make sure the building was safe. We turned off gas lines and unplugged smoking electronics. Keith and David were absolute heroes. I rescued my violin, which I had foolishly been keeping on my office floor. Lisa and I went home tired, but grateful. In the following days, a steady stream of volunteers came by to see how we were doing and how they could help. We rummaged through closets and cabinets, sorting out what was waterlogged and what was salvageable. We hired an amazing restoration company to help. We spent hours on the phone with our insurance companies. We taped off what wasn't safe. Those not able to get to the meeting house sent encouraging text messages and emails. Our wider community and so many neighboring UU churches checked in to see how we were doing. I'll admit that at times, the enormity of the situation before me got overwhelming. The sheer amount of mud and trash and soggy cardboard boxes was just too much. And as I dried out soggy marriage licenses and threw away dear mementos, I did get sad. But all week, I had been researching how to keep a New Year's resolution. And the advice began sounding in my ear. It turns out it holds true for floods, as well as New Year's resolutions. How to keep a New Year's resolution and survive a flood. Do not let yourself be overwhelmed by the enormity of the goal or task. Just take the next small step that is required. And do not let your emotions hook you. Use mindfulness to detach emotions from the task before you. And you will realize that flossing your teeth does not have to be arduous and horrible. Throwing things out does not have to be devastating. These can be neutral activities. They can even be joyous. Taken one small step at a time, goals can be reached. Insurance policies can be navigated. A challenge can become an opportunity. So we have been offered an opportunity to clean out our junk. And we had a lot of it for the new year. To become more selective about what we keep and where. To rebuild smarter and to store things higher. We have been offered the opportunity to take stock of what is really important in this new year. And I'll give you a hint. It isn't things. Much has changed since Thursday, enough so that I decided to scrap my sermon for today. But you know, that opening reading that I chose on Tuesday, it still works, and it's helped me a lot this week. My wise colleague, Robbie Walsh, who passed away this year, wrote, "It's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made, losses have been suffered, there has been growth and decay, there have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether during this year one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident. But now it is settled. If he were here today, I imagine he would add floods to that list. The tide could not be held back. The damage has been done. It is true that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions or the chances of the world, Robbie wrote. But what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be. We still get to decide how our story turns out. We get to decide what the meaning of this experience will be. And I have a hunch that in the new year, this congregation is going to write a story of recovery, of neighbors helping neighbors, of a community pitching in to clean up and repair a building that we love and that we appreciate even more now than we did before, of volunteers going above and beyond what is asked of them, of help pouring in from a network of care that extends far beyond our imagining. Maybe the meaning that emerges will be that we find out just how loved we are, just how held we are by the tender web of connections that invisibly surrounds us, that we find out that we are more capable, stronger, and more resilient than we ever dreamed we could be. Much has changed this week, but I think that good, strong ending that I had written earlier in the week to my original sermon about New Year's resolutions still works. So I'm going to close with that. I saw a cartoon the other day that I loved. In the first frame, one person asked the other one, "Why so optimistic about 2018? What do you think it will bring? Everything seems so messed up." The second person answers, "I think it will bring flowers." "Yeah? How come?" the first person asks. And the second person, who is on her hands and knees in the dirt, answers, "Because I am planting flowers." We don't know how everything will work out or what the new year holds, but some of what we can expect is based on what seeds we are sowing now that will come to flower and to bear fruit in time. My colleague Erica Hewitt said recently, "If the new year has any real power, perhaps it's in getting us to admit to ourselves and one another that we want to let go of what's hurt or burdened us, that we want to make better choices, that we're willing to risk naming the ways we'll make those better choices." And she offered her favorite quote from psychotherapist David Rico, who says, "What makes us human beings so uniquely wonderful is this, in this puzzling universe, is that we never give up on love. Against all odds, with no guarantee of being loved in return, out of the hate and hurt so often handed us, in the face of the sad suffering history has let us see, we go on loving. What deep respect we deserve for this capacity of ours to make love out of anything and to let it last." May 2018 be a year full of flowers. May it be a year of many resolutions, of community coming together in hard times, of weathering storms and floods and personal hurts. May it be a year in which we never give up on love. Amen, and blessed be. Let's close with one last hymn.